everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the Art as Well. This is a special, sort of intermediate edition of the Art as Well. Nick has very kindly offered to be our guest interviewer, and the first person he's got to interview is none other than a highly esteemed sculptor in Australia, and it's Ron Robertson Swan. So he'll tell us a little bit about that. And Nick is ideally placed insofar as he has huge experience in the art world in Australia. I think, Nick, you've been there for about 30 years or so, have you?
I have a bit longer than that, in fact. Yeah.
Really?
What
Okay.
happened with me was that in the 1960s and early 70s in Ireland, things were very tough for younger people trying to get work. So
Mm.
my best friend and I, we both hatched a plan, which was basically to go to the States, make a fortune, come back to Ireland. We went to the States. We
Mm.
made a fortune, but we blew it all on a trip.
I didn't know this about you.
we blew
What?
we blew it on a trip across right across the States in a little 6-volt battery VW combi. And then we arrived back at home and thought, oh my God, so much for the fortune that we made. And
Yeah.
eventually, what happened was his sister married a guy, a really fantastic hairdresser from Dublin, and
Mhm.
they migrated to Sydney. And we
Mhm.
said, oh, well, that's our next big plan. So we did the same. Yeah.
Fantastic. So what year was that?
Oh, that was 1972.
Oh, okay. All
So
right.
I've been here over 50 years now, you know. But
Gosh.
yeah, my connection with Ireland was that my father used to work for Goulding's Fertilizer, and that's
Great.
actually
Yeah.
what got me into the art as well. I don't know what it was. I was doing something or other. Actually, I know what it was. I was looking up the Goulding's art collection
Mm.
because when Michael Farrell came out here, I hooked up with him and got to know him pretty well.
Right.
Um, and I thought I knew that he had work in Goulding's, and then Tim Goulding's interview with you came up, and
Yeah.
that's what interested me in the art as well. So
I didn't know that.
yeah,
That's incredible. So were
yeah.
you living in Cork originally?
I grew up in Cork.
Yeah.
My dad was working for Goulding's in Cork,
Mm.
and then he got a promotion, and we moved up to Dublin. Lived in just outside of Dunleary in a place
Yeah.
called Cabinteely.
Cabinteely, which is
Yeah,
literally next door.
yeah, yeah. My best
That's
friend used to
extraordinary.
live in Foxrock. Yeah.
Good Lord. What else are you going to surprise me with?
What other questions have you got?
Well, I'll certainly give you a few. So that's really interesting. I wasn't aware of that kind of exact connection because I knew you sent me an email and I wrote back to you and then we started to correspond and I thought, gosh, you'd be wonderful at interviewing. But let's talk about a bit about your connection with the arts because you have a really deep connection with the arts in Sydney and with universities and teaching institutions in Sydney. Can you give us a sort of a potted history about all of that?
I can. Basically, once I'd sort of settled in Sydney and got myself, sorted with housing and jobs and that sort of thing, a new government came in, and it was called the Gough Whitlam government, and they made everything free as far as education goes. They introduced the health system and it had some revolutionary sort of changes.
Hmm.
So I took myself off to art school. I'd always wanted to go to art school. I used to go, actually, I did one session in Dunleary Tech,
Mm. Yes.
Technical College,
Mm.
evening classes. And I always wanted to go to art school, and here was my opportunity. So I went first part-time at night time, then enjoyed it so much that I, decided to go full-time and studied. Oh, I mean, I just loved it. I took to it like a duck to water.
Yes.
And it was an era when, everything was kind of changing, and whether it was for the better or for the worse, but the big introduction was video and film and all of that. But I'd had, a sort of what do you call it, traditional kind of education in drawing
Yes.
and painting and that sort of thing. So from there, I went to art school for, I prolonged it because I enjoyed it so long. And I went for about 6 years. To my regret, I came to the conclusion that actually I wasn't an artist. And when I reached that conclusion, it was when some students at the art college
Mm.
asked me if I could help them set up an art gallery, which I
Yeah,
said, of course I can. You know, you say yes to everything when you're that age.
sure.
Um, and and sure enough, I set up an art gallery, and I thought, this is magic. I thought I'd actually sort of found myself, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was a sad kind of realization that I wasn't an artist, but a great realization that what I was really enjoying was installing artworks and curating works of artists, well, of artworks that I wish that I'd have been able to make myself. So I was very, very modest about it, but in the end, I sort of thought, well, damn it, I might not be an artist, but I'll be an art curator or administrator. And from there, it was, setting up galleries, managing art collections, working for universities. Most of the galleries that I set up were based in universities.
Were
Um,
they? Yeah.
yeah, I never went down the commercial track. I never set up the Nick Vickers
Oh,
Art Gallery and represented artists, but I used the universities and the art colleges as a kind of a platform
yeah.
for,
And tell me about your teaching, because I mean that's been a big part of your career as well. And it's all involved in arts administration and curating, I guess.
yeah, I work at a technical college, which is just one step outside of the universities, and it's a place called Meadowbank TAFE College. What I teach there with a colleague of mine, Isabel Johnston, we formulated a course which was art administration. So what we actually decided was we're going to teach all of the subjects that we never learned when we did our Masters of Art Administration at university. So
Mm.
universities are very theoretical, and we decided we'd be very practical. So we
All right.
teach people the nuts and bolts of running galleries, how the Australian art world works, that sort of thing.
Mm.
Yeah,
And
and that's
it applies to commercial and non-commercial galleries.
both. Oh yeah,
Both.
absolutely. We show a broad spectrum of everything that's on offer.
Mm.
Students, because the students come in, some of them want to work at universities, some of them want to work behind the scenes, at places like Create New South Wales, where artists apply for grants and
Mm.
stipends and that sort of thing. So we've broadened it out so that it's not just specifically galleries, not specifically museums, but we try to give the students a background and a behind the scenes kind of
Yeah.
view of how the art world, what makes it tick.
Mm, mm. So after all these years, you must have come across an incredible number of artists of all genre disciplines.
I have, and it's been really interesting because I worked at the college where I studied. I worked there for a good 10 years. Had a most unusual job, which was in the days when there were sort of student unions. I was the manager of the student union at an
Mm,
art college. And that was a really interesting kind of job because I was
mm.
required to, first of all, interact with all of the students, represent the students, and that
Yes.
sort of thing. But also, in that time, I set up an art material. I got the art materials store running. We set up a restaurant, set up a couple of galleries. So
Mm.
in that time, I met some remarkable, talented young artists. And in a way, I pinned my flag to the mast of emerging artists.
Mm.
Not because it was a strategic thing, but I thought these young people, they come out of art school, where do they go then? So if
Yeah.
you can offer them a an exhibition just to get them started, get them the feel of what it's like to actually exist as an artist, which, as you
Mm.
know, is not an easy career. And I must say that in Australia, there's not a lot of tax breaks for artists. There's not a lot of ways that artists can get, a studio that might be subsidized or a stipend. Some of the European countries offer a stipend to emerging artists. Ireland at one stage had the most fantastic tax breaks for artists and creative people. I'm not sure whether it still works. That
Yeah, no, that's still in existence.
Yeah, you see,
Yeah.
that's remarkable. And
Mhm.
what irks me a little bit about Australia is that there's a lot of great wealth in Australia, but
Mhm.
not a lot of that flows down to the visual arts or creativity in general.
Mm. Surprising.
It
But
is.
I've no doubt you and the people you surround yourself with have made depositions to try and change that, haven't you?
Oh, you always do. You always sort of try, but in the end, you come up with the old problem, and that is, and this is going back to my lecturing. Um, in all countries, most countries, only about 15 or 20% of the population are interested in creativity. And this is not so good if you're in a country of 27 million people. But if you're connected to Europe, like Ireland is, then you've got, probably 480, 500 million people.
Mhm.
15% of that makes it a much more viable kind of career.
Sure. Yes. Having said that, if you're trying to rely on little old Ireland, you're looking at 5 million. So you're
Well,
multiples of that.
that's true, but I must say that the prices realized in the commercial sector and also in the secondary market in Ireland uh, far outstrip the ones that we get in Australia,
Really?
especially in the commercial. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
interesting. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because I'm often astounded by sort of, French prices and all these other, and America as well. And you
Yeah.
just, we never seem to get to that.
No, but I mean the Americans, they go over the top when it comes to, you know, like the prices of anything. Like I still think that Francis Bacon is still their highest, but Jeff Koons is coming uh, close after that. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it's. I do think that in the secondary market, um, it's became, it's keeping up with the Joneses.
Mm.
If your next door neighbor has got you know, a, well, I was going to say a Brett Whiteley, he's an Australian artist, but
Mm.
a Francis Bacon, well, then you've got to have one as well.
Yes. Yes. As I said, you've obviously come across an awful lot of artists. Now, the artist that you've chosen for your first interview is Ron Robertson Swan. Tell me a little bit about him.
Look,
I know we're going to hear a lot more on Saturday.
you will, but Ron is a remarkable artist. He's one of those, true to the sense, he has stuck to his guns and never decided to, move away from what his kind of central core and philosophy is.
Mm.
So it's not like, a landscape painter who suddenly becomes a portrait painter.
Yeah.
He's stuck to his guns in a very kind of big way and is a very
Mm.
sincere uh, artist who just has his opinion of art is that it's one of those kind of areas that you just have to commit yourself to, and it
Mm.
doesn't. I've often talked to him about, well, what degrees did you get, and what did it? He said, listen, I was offered a professorship, and I turned it down because
Mm.
that's not what my practice is all about. And it's
Yes.
true. When we have that interview, it is a matter of tracing his background from early days at the technical college,
Mm.
went to London for 8 years, came back and worked back in the technical college, having
Mm.
worked with Henry Moore and with,
Well, I was just going to say that. I mean, he worked for 3 years with Henry Moore, and we'd know at this side of the world, we'd know of him very well.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
very much so, you know.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
he picked up an awful lot of skills, a lot of knowledge. And then, of course, when he went back into education, he shared that knowledge. And that is the great the great thing about working overseas. When you come back, you've got an awful lot to share with
Mhm.
people. And
Yeah,
at that time as well, you never kind of you weren't accepted very thoroughly in Australia if you hadn't been overseas. It was
really.
almost like, yeah, you almost had to do that. It was a kind of a rite of passage to, do your time in either, Chelsea in New York or London, some of the big capitals, which were seen as, the center of the art world.
Mm.
Um, and Ron sort of did that and came back. But since then, he's very forthright in his opinions of what good and bad sculpture is.
Absolutely. And also I think an interesting part of him, and this comes out in the interview, is talking about his painting
Oh yeah,
and how the fact that he has been pigeonholed in a sense in Australia as a sculptor, nobody accepts him as a painter.
yes, that's right. And he sees his two practices as quite separate, even though they run parallel with one another. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's taken
Interesting.
out a few painting prize, prestigious ones, Yeah,
That's what when the judges changed.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah. When they weren't Australian, they didn't
Yeah.
know.
And of course, the painters all pigeonholed him as well as a sculptor, and they got rightly upset when he took out one of the major art
Yeah.
prizes.
Tell me about the whole gallery scene over in Australia. How has that evolved over the years? Now, I know yours have been to do with students and so on, but I mean, you'd understand what's going on in terms of the changes in that market and that business.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. I mean, some of the main galleries, the one that I mentioned in my interview with Ron is Australian Galleries, which that was a family business from, Stuart Purvis's mother set it up early on in the day.
Mm.
But since then, a lot of independent gallerists have sort of started up. It's never an easy ride setting up a commercial gallery because you're taking a risk at all times. Yeah, it's a knowledgeable risk, but at the same time, you've got to kind of almost educate the public,
Yep.
So
Mm.
a lot of the commercial galleries that have set up, they've evolved from the 1980s. We had a new kind of form of gallery, which was like an artist's run gallery, which was an interesting one because in Australia at that time, most of the galleries were looking after the well-established artists, and there were no breaks for the younger artists.
Mm.
Since
Yes.
then, that has changed because now the whole generation has sort of evolved into
Mm.
the fact that there are a lot of younger people now setting up their own galleries, and they're in touch with the next generation of artists.
Mm.
So it's
That's
quite
that's largely
evolving.
thanks to you, though, isn't it?
Well, I would hope so, but
Yeah.
it
Mhm.
it is really great that a new group of people are coming in
Sure.
to set up galleries, and they're putting a new view on things. There's the contemporary art fairs that they attend. They take their artists to, you know, what
Yeah.
is what is lacking, and it's going back to the other problem is I keep on thinking, where are those 40-year-old merchant bankers who should be the next generation of collectors?
Mm.
Because they're an important group of people when it comes
Yes.
to the gallery scene, you know.
Yeah.
But the
Absolutely.
gallery scene in Australia is very vibrant. We
Mm.
just had the Sydney Contemporary Art Fair, which had nearly 100 galleries, close to 100 galleries all under one roof, and that
Wow.
was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yes.
Um, but that's a great expense as well. Those
Mm.
like I don't know what would it be, maybe 20, 25 meters of wall space. 40 or $50,000 for 4 days, and that's
Wow. Really?
a big investment. Yeah.
God.
But there's a great commitment with the commercial galleries,
Mm.
and a
Mm.
deep sincerity, which I think is just commendable.
Fantastic. So, what sort of other artists might you have lined up for us in the future? Are there a few people that might come to mind?
Yeah, I
No,
have.
this is not going to be full time now, you know that.
No, I realize that. But I do have, there's an interesting artist that I'd love to interview. Her name is Danielle Bergstrom. Uh, has a Swedish name, and I think that she'll be a really interesting artist because she's gone back to the northern part of Sweden, which is the southern part of Finland, a place called Åland, and she's working there on a project where there's a guy is building, he's recreating a boat called a galea,
Oh,
and she's working as the kind of artist in residence with him. So
yes.
she's an Australian. Her her dad was Swedish, but she grew up in Australia, and she's now gone back to Sweden, where she's been established now, probably for about 7 or 8 years. Yeah,
And does she come back and forth?
she does. Yeah,
She does.
and she's
Yeah.
also part of an interesting group of artists who all they they bought property in a inland in New South Wales. It's about
Mhm.
4 hours drive from Sydney, a little place called Hill End, and it's like a colony of artists, like the
All
old
right.
days of Oscar Kokoschka, who used to, have in Eastern Europe, he used to have
Mm.
colonies of artists, and it's a little
Yeah.
bit like that, and it's a vibrant kind of place. So I want to talk to her about that. I want to talk to
Mm.
her about. She's also a portrait painter. She's a landscape artist, and then she's working on this other project, which I think will be a really interesting one. And
Sounds
of
fascinating.
course, not so far from Ireland either, not quite as far as Australia.
That's true. That's
Yeah,
true. So you'll be interviewing her from there not when she's back in Australia
I'll do a Zoom meeting with her.
with her. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Now, before we finish, tell us about a project that you did quite recently to do with Ukraine, and you gathered a number of artists together, as you're very good at.
I did. It was just when the war broke out in Ukraine, and
Mm.
I was literally sort of sitting on the couch watching the news, and I said to Anita, I said, geez, somebody's got to do something about this. This is a disaster. Because what it was a little old lady came out of her basement and realized that the whole of her village had been flattened. And
Gosh.
my heart went out to her, and I just sort of thought, well, what's going to happen to the next generation, those children that have
Mm.
got to live through that? So what I did was I thought it was going to be somebody else would do this, but it wasn't. So I kind of just got on the phone and got on the internet and contacted about 100 of my colleagues, artists, and I said, look, at the art college where I work, we had the gallery was available, and I said, let's in 6 weeks I put on an exhibition, and we sold nearly all of the works. We raised nearly 50,000 Australian dollars, and that was fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
and then I did another one, a printmaking one, the following year, and that was
Mm.
about 25,000. So we've raised about 75,000 Australian dollars, and I forged a link with a place called Voices of Children, which is a children's
Mm.
home in Ukraine, and
Very
all
good.
of the money just goes directly. All of the artists, they donated their work. There was no commission. They all donated it. 100% of their work went to
Mm.
the Ukraine. It was
Yeah.
one of those kind of initiatives that just came out of nowhere. And
Mm.
6 weeks, I've never organized such a big exhibition in 6 weeks, but
Yeah.
yeah, it
And
worked.
where did you actually hold the exhibition?
I held it at the art college where I work, at
Ah, okay.
Meadowbank Technical College. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And they gave me
Fantastic.
the gallery for nothing. Yeah,
Mm.
everyone sort of donated, and it was just
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah, I do find that um, and the currency that artists have is their artwork. They most of the time that you can't ask them for a loan of some money, but they'll always step up
Mm.
to the plate and donate a work for a
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Nick, I'm thrilled that we got to know you because you're incredibly well positioned there in Australia with all the contacts you have.
Yeah.
it's tremendous that you've agreed to be part of this. And I hope you'll enjoy the experience too. And of course, the whole idea really is to forge a relationship between Australia and Ireland, the artists, and indeed the collectors, because
Yes.
we get a lot of collectors looking in at our Irish artists. Now they're going to be looking at Australian artists and
Oh,
vice
great.
versa. Yeah,
Yeah.
vice versa.
Yeah.
So God knows where it'll end up. You just
Look,
never know.
that, but that is the industry that we're working in. You
Yeah,
just never know. It's
yeah,
it's the most exciting industry because it keeps on progressing as new
mm,
artists sort of come forward, new ideas come forward. I mean, I always say it's the artists come first. They're the ones with the ideas. The
yes,
galleries follow, the art curators follow the galleries, and then the collectors come in and they sort of say, we must have one of those. So it's a wonderful kind of cyclical and circular kind of industry, but it
yeah.
keeps on renewing itself, and that's what's so exciting about it. Yeah,
That's true, actually. Yes, yeah, very
yeah,
true. Yeah.
yeah.
Great stuff. Well, look, we said we keep this fairly short, Nick, so we'll do that. And on Saturday, 10 o'clock Irish time, we're going to be launching your first interview. Now, this is obviously
Thanks.
pre-recorded, but in the future, they mightn't all be pre-recorded. There might be some live ones as well. It'll be a mixture.
We'll try for that for sure.
We'll
Yeah,
try, we'll try for that.
yeah.
So listen, lovely talking to you again. And
Oh,
every
you
time I
too.
talk to you, I learn more about you. So it's
Yeah,
tremendous. Thanks so much.
that's great. My pleasure. I'm really looking forward to being involved. It's great.
Thanks very much. And we'll see you Saturday.
Okay, looking forward to it.
Okay.
Okay.
Cheers. Bye bye.